What's up, folks? We're packed and stacked with a lot of brand new insight about G.I. Joe Classified. In today's episode, join us for our weekly Snowcat report. Is there a secret unlockable tier for the Snowcat? Which characters and add-ons make the most sense? Why were characters like Iceberg, Stalker, and Blizzard not used as Haslab tiers? What needs to be changed and improved? And what hidden details have we found on the Snowcat? We've got answers on all of that and a lot more. Watch until the end and get the full story. And remember, when it comes to G.I. Joe insight, clarity, and consistent quality, there's no substitute for the real thing. Before we get started, if you're not yet subscribed to Viper Island, now is the perfect time. Subscribe today so you don't miss an episode or any of our exclusive insight, research, and opinions. But first, we're going to start with the Legacy Collection Police ESU figure. We can now confirm exactly why Hasbro pulled the plug on its June 11th fan stream, and why they mysteriously disappeared the Legacy Collection Police ESU figure off the table. Buckle up, because it's even more absurd than you might think. According to what we've been told, Hasbro panicked. Plain and simple. Reportedly, they were terrified that releasing a police-themed figure right now could spark outrage. But here's the problem. The outrage never happened. No protests, no massive backlash. Instead, the only fury came from collectors who were excited to buy the figure, which is what Hasbro wants, but instead felt robbed when Hasbro pulled the rug out from under them. In other words, Hasbro braced for a storm that did not exist, and then created a whole new one by going silent. According to what we've been told, Hasbro is still planning to drop this figure later this fall, but based on what we've been told, their current plan is to do it in the most spineless way possible. No announcement, no explanation, just a stealth pre-order drop that they hope will fly under the radar. They're gambling that fans will forgive them and scoop it up anyway. That's called taking your audience for granted. The current date they're targeting is December 1st, 2025. So yes, the Police ESU figure is still in the 2025 lineup for G.I. Joe Classified at the time of filming. But let's be brutally honest, nothing is going to magically improve by December 1st. If anything, the environment around policing will only get more heated in the months to come. And Hasbro's weak attempt to duck controversy now has turned what should have been a minor reveal into a flaming mess. They could have stood behind their product. They could have been upfront with collectors. Instead, they vanished, refusing to communicate, refusing to answer questions, and treating their loyal fan base like a problem to avoid rather than a community to respect. For a company that survives on fan loyalty, this is downright insulting. Hasbro loves to brag about community engagement and being open and transparent, but the moment things got uncomfortable for them, they ghosted. And by ghosting, they poured gasoline on the fire. From start to finish, this was a problem that Hasbro created themselves. There's no nice way to say this. Hasbro misplayed every part of this situation. They're hoping that we'll all forget, that we'll all just accept a quiet release months later and offer no pushback. They think they can just outweight collectors rather than face them and be open and transparent. As usual, there's very little communication from the Hasbro team. If anything, this situation has proven that Hasbro would rather gamble its entire brand reputation than stand up and actually talk to the people who keep their lights on. At the end of the day, that's not strategy, that's cowardice. And again, no matter how you feel about the issues that we're talking about, the lack of communication is the major problem here. So let's break it down. Did Hasbro sabotage itself for absolutely no reason? Did they destroy goodwill with their own fans over a toy? Should they have just stood tall and released the figure as planned, rather than caving to fear? Let's be real, these are toys. It never had to get this ugly, but Hasbro made it ugly by refusing to communicate, hiding away, canceling a fan stream for no reason, and not releasing the figure that they themselves showed off only a week before. Now they're acting like it doesn't even exist, while secretly planning behind the scenes to still release it later this fall. So once again, according to our information, Hasbro still plans to release the Police ESU figure with a December 1st release date. So now it's your turn. Did Hasbro completely botch this, or do you think their fears were justified? Tell us below, and let Hasbro know that fans are watching. If you're enjoying this, hit the like button and make sure you're subscribed. Next, welcome to your official Snowcat report. brought to you by Viper Island. If you're wondering where this campaign stands, what's working, and where it's veering off track, you're in the right place. Every week, we'll dive into every angle to give you the full picture. And today, we'll discuss how the campaign is performing, what Hasbro may need to rethink, the hidden details that most people have overlooked, whether there's still a secret tier to be revealed, and the big question, can the Snowcat Haslab campaign still be saved? And first up, we're going to kick this off with the campaign status. After 9 days, the Snowcat Haslab is yet to reach its 8,000 backer goal, trailing far behind where the Hiss, Dragonfly, and Rattler were within their first 24 hours. As a reminder, the Hiss tank hit the required 8,000 backers mark in under 12 hours. The total units backed by the end of the campaign was 26,772. The Dragonfly required 10,000 backers to fund, and it did so in the first 26 hours. It ended with a total count of 24,764 by the end of its campaign. The Cobra Rattler required 9,000 backers in order to fund, and it did so in the first 24 hours, and it closed with a final tally of 26,903, which is the highest to date. Then over to the Snowcat, which is currently in the 6,700 mark, but that's after the first 9 days. 8,000 backers are required to fund, so this hasn't even passed the starting line yet. All of the other classified Haslabs were funded in the first day. We're now at the 9-day mark, and the Snowcat is still lagging far behind. The earlier Haslab vehicles didn't just fund fast, they surged past expectations. These were not slow burns, they were rocket launches. The Snowcat, by contrast, feels more like an engine stalling on the runway. Interest has definitely plateaued before the project is even funded. Now let's talk about the projections. Where is this headed? The Snowcat's slow start puts the campaign in dangerous territory. With less than 6,700 backers after 9 days on a 45-day campaign, that equals roughly 700 backers per day, but most of that came from the first 24 hours. Backer counts always drop off in the middle phase, then pick up toward the end. But without a strong day 1 and 2, that final tally tends to underperform. And this is where there's major concern for the Snowcat. Assuming a conservative mid-campaign slowdown and an end-stage boost to the totals, the Snowcat is currently tracking toward a final tally in the 11,000 to 13,000 range. And that's assuming it gets past the 8,000 mark and funds at all. Let's be clear about this. Without a shakeup of this project or more being added to it, there's a serious risk of this stalling before the finish line. As it stands, the best case scenario is 11,000 to 13,000, and that's well below the 25,000 mark that Hasbro was likely hoping for. There's no denying that they have already mishandled the Snowcat campaign from the start. We've already highlighted some of the problems, and poor communication seems to be something that the Hasbro team still can't escape. Relying on interviews with small outlets that are largely ignored by most of the G.I.JOE Classified audience continues to be something that's holding them back, and possibly a sign that Hasbro still hasn't learned much about its audience 5 years into the line. Now let's talk about what's not working, and what could fix it. The Snowcat's base set is packed with quality. There are lights, survival gear, sculpted realism, and surprising versatility, but even that hasn't been enough to spark a surge. So what's missing? First, there's the underwhelming tier reveals. While Flint and Lady J are solid choices, especially in Arctic gear, they're not exciting debuts. A 4th tier could reignite interest, or even replacing Flint and Lady J with 2 different figures that hold a wider appeal. Keep watching, because later in this episode, we're going to pitch you 5 figures that could change the game and get the Snowcat campaign back on track. Secondly, there's minimal firepower. Seriously, we're talking only 2 blast effects for 6 missiles? That's a half measure. Here on Viper Island, we don't hold back. We talk about the good and the bad, but 2 blast effects for 6 missiles? So far, Hasbro has missed the opportunity to load this up with blast effects that are worthy of a battlefield and elevate the whole package. This is not the time to hold back on a few extra blast effects that could help put this over the top and create more interest. And third, where are the guns? There's no rear gun pod, and no added firepower. A detachable turret, similar to the Hiss tank's turret with guns, could make a great final unlockable tier and add serious tactical presence. So before we proceed, let's turn this over to you for a moment. While Hasbro is actively making tweaks to the Snowcat, we want your opinion about what they've missed and what needs to be improved. If you're on the fence about backing the Snowcat, tell us what improvements could change your mind. Or is it too late? Now let's jump over to 6 details that you may have missed. And we'll start with the turret. At first glance, the 360-degree rotating turret looks like standard gear, but pop it off the Snowcat and a new function emerges. It's a standalone ground turret. Outside of the Snowcat, the rotating turret doubles as a ground unit. That's an instant diorama upgrade. Then there's the design tweaks. These are changes that Hasbro's going to make in the tooling phase. The floor of the personnel carrier will receive diamond-plated texturing, and new sculpting is planned for the fenders around the wheels and treads. Hasbro's trying to refine the mold for realism. As for a turret cable, Hasbro's hinted at the possibility of adding a cable to connect the turret to the vehicle, and this could potentially evoke a more tactical wired look. But fair warning, this doesn't exist yet. They're thinking about it, they're working on it, but this could also be cut for budget reasons, so this one's still in limbo, and the final answer might come down to backer numbers. But let's be honest, no one's going to back this over just a cable. Then there are the logos. One side of the Snowcat proudly sports the classic G.I. Joe logo. The other side features the Classified series star. It's a smart nod to both eras. Then let's talk size. You may have heard it before, the Snowcat Haslab has been upscaled from the 1980s version. But here's the twist. What if it's not actually upscaled at all? In the original cartoon, the Snowcat often appeared this big. Compared to the undersized vintage toy, the Haslab version might actually be the correct scale all along. So yes, it's much bigger, but arguably, it's finally the right size. The 1980s version was downscaled from what it was supposed to be. And now for the wild card, the pull-out kitchenette on the side of the Snowcat. Is this just a fun little diorama piece? Maybe, but dig deeper, and it starts to look like something more deliberate. The original Snowcat mold was reused in the 80s to create the Havoc Mark II, a vehicle that shares the exact same frame. And if you remember the Thunder Machine music video by Cold Slither, the Havoc makes a key appearance, hinting that it might join the Classified lineup in the near future. So what does this have to do with the kitchenette? Well, if you remove the kitchenette, you'll be left with a hollow channel beneath the canopy. And this channel is perfectly shaped to fit the pivot bar for a gunner pod that sits over top of the canopy, just like the Havoc's signature feature. In other words, this pull-out kitchenette might not be just a quirky feature, it might be preparation. Is it possible that the Snowcat has been secretly engineered and future-proofed to support a future Havoc release? We believe that this is the case. Hasbro may already be laying the groundwork for the Havoc, but it raises the question, should the Havoc be its own Haslab project, and are fans ready for that? And are Hasbro's plans for the Havoc the sole reason that the Snowcat is this year's Haslab? If so, they might shoot themselves in the foot by worrying about the future instead of the present. Sound off in the comments and let Hasbro know how you feel. If you're enjoying this, hit the like button and make sure you're subscribed. Then, is there more? If you're getting deja vu, there's a reason. The His Tank campaign started strong and then stalled. It wasn't until Hasbro pulled a last-minute move and announced the Mickey Mouse version of Cobra Commander as a surprise 4th tier that things surged again for the His Tank. The result? A campaign that ended with over 26,000 backers and cemented the His Tank Haslab as a franchise high point. Now look at the Snowcat. It also caps out its 3rd tier at 14,000 backers, the exact same number as the His campaign before Cobra Commander was added. Could this be a clue that a 4th tier is possible at 16,000 backers? And would it help give the Snowcat a boost? Let us know if you're waiting for more to be added to the Snowcat before you back it. As for where we stand, every G.I. Joe Classified Haslab to date has pulled in 24,000 to 26,000 backers. If that trend holds, then the Snowcat should easily hit the 14,000 mark, and possibly far beyond. But like we've covered, even that's not guaranteed. Right now, collectors are asking themselves if the existing offering, the vehicle, gear, and unlockable tiers, is truly enough to justify the cost. And for many, they're simply just not interested. But Hasbro could once again sway the fence-sitters with one final reveal. If that happens, we could see a momentum shift like we did with the His Tank. But keep in mind, the His Tank was much further along than the Snowcat is right now at the 9-day mark. Assuming that a fourth tier is needed to get the Snowcat funded, the big question is what a fourth unlockable tier might be. So let's look at a few logical possibilities. First, a final Arctic-themed figure, and we propose Whiteout, the original Snowcat version 2 driver. He's very similar to Snowjob, so a simple repaint with a new head sculpt might suffice. Hasbro could complete the Snowcat legacy by including both classic drivers. And let's remember, Whiteout likely won't be released any other way, so this would be the definitive version. Just like Glenda in the Dragonfly campaign, this could also be a meaningful tier that turns a lesser-known character into a fan favorite. Or how about Pantano, the Brazilian repaint of Iceberg version 2? This fits the Haslab model, an obscure, international, and visually distinct character. A similar strategy worked well with adding Glenda to the Dragonfly, so this could be lightning striking twice. Then let's talk about Snowjob version 6. This version is white with light gray digital camo. He has a snowboard this time instead of skis, and this is a modern tactical evolution that brings a fresh twist to a classic character. Many collectors missed out on the exclusive Snowjob. That was a deluxe figure, and it's possible that Hasbro needs to add something like this in order to maximize interest with the Snowcat. Or how about Arctic Big Ben? And this would be based on version 3. This would be a repaint of a figure that many collectors missed out on. That means it's budget-friendly for Hasbro, but still compelling. Give Big Ben some new gear and an alternate head sculpt, and this helps level up the Snowcat in a major way. This adds troop power and builds excitement amongst collectors, especially those who missed out on the Night Force Big Ben. And of course, we have to talk about a G.I. Joe Arctic Trooper. The Snowcat Haslab is currently missing any kind of troop builder. This is an easy, obvious, and likely addition, and this would increase army builder appeal for collectors who are backing multiple units. It seems like a no-brainer, and it's curious why Hasbro didn't consider a G.I. Joe Arctic Trooper instead of either Lady J or Flint. But maybe it's not about another figure at all. Adding a new tier of a towable trailer opens up new levels of play and display. It would be a setup for the Polar Battle Bear snowmobile, which we believe is on the horizon for 2026. A towable trailer would transform the Snowcat into more than just a vehicle. It then becomes a hub, part of a connected G.I. Joe winter campaign. That's the kind of thinking that elevates a Haslab from cool to a dream project. And if a trailer doubles as a personnel carrier when the Polar Battle Bear is put into use, then even better. Collectors who might pass on the Snowcat could be tempted if it acts as the gateway to a broader Arctic lineup with essential add-ons. So where does this leave us? Hasbro's followed this script before, and it worked. Hasbro really has no choice. They have to level up the Snowcat, or risk it not being funded at all. Is a fourth tier what the campaign needs to reignite interest and reward the faithful backers who believed in it from day one? And will it even make a difference? Or was the Snowcat a mistake for a Haslab, when most collectors wanted the Mobat or Mauler tanks instead? Over the last year, we covered how the Mobat was the runaway pick by G.I. Joe Classified collectors around the world. He wasn't our choice, it was what the fans wanted. So therefore, the lack of excitement about the Snowcat from most collectors is not really a surprise. So what would you want to see as a final tier? Whiteout, a new Snowjob, the Brazilian version of Iceberg, a troop builder G.I. Joe Arctic Trooper, Arctic Big Ben, a snowmobile trailer, or something totally unexpected? Drop your thoughts in the comments and let Hasbro know how to finish strong. If you're enjoying this, hit the like button and make sure you're subscribed. Then let's talk about why so many fans are disappointed. Expectations were sky high. Some wanted the Mobat. Others were hoping for long-awaited figures like Blizzard or Iceberg. So when Flint and Lady J were announced as unlockable tiers, reactions were mixed. But let's be clear, Flint and Lady J are not straight repaints. They're all new winterized versions, designed to match the Snowcat's environment with sculpted gear and accessories to match. Iceberg and Blizzard were never going to be added as tiers. They are first-run characters. And Hasbro's strategy is to keep major debuts like Iceberg and Blizzard available to everyone, not locked behind Haslabs. This avoids the backlash that comes from locking fan favorites behind a $325 paywall. And now it's time for the bottom line. Yes, the Snowcat slow start is concerning, and yes, some of the tiers are too safe and boring, but the campaign is not yet finished. A strong final tier, better messaging, and a few key upgrades could turn things around. So what do you think? Is the Snowcat suffering from a poor rollout, or is it just not what fans wanted in the first place? Would you back this if Hasbro added the right final tier? Let us know. And as always, stay locked into Viper Island for full coverage. And there you have it. You've made it to the end of this episode, and we really appreciate that. Thumbs up down below. And we would love it even more if you take just 1 second of your time. Make sure that down below you are subscribed to the channel. We ask that you do, because that guarantees that we definitely get to see you back here again next time. Thanks for tuning into Viper Island, your one-stop shop for all things G.I. Joe. When there's relevant news, we'll be here to discuss all of it, together with you. Thanks for watching, thanks for supporting, have a great day, and yo Joe!